Great. So I think we'll get started as we do have quite a full agenda. Let me first alert everybody that this meeting is being recorded, and also to highlight for you that should you wish to get interpretation that is in any one of FAO's 5 languages, you will see at the bottom of your Zoom screen a little button. It's the far right button that says interpretation. If you click that, you can get your choice of language. So please do go there if you find you're more comfortable in another language. And as I said, very warm welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Really thank you for joining this side event, Multi-stakeholder climate action in support of sustainable livestock-based food systems, which is organized by the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock, or GASL, as you may hear us say, in cooperation with the governments of Switzerland, Uruguay, Kenya, Mongolia, Ireland, and Canada, together with the World Farmers Organization and the FAO Livestock Environment Assessment and Performance, or LEAP, and the Global Dairy Platform. My name is Shirley Tarawali, and I'm chair of the Global Agenda for Sustainable Livestock. I'm also Assistant Director General at the International Livestock Research Institute based in Nairobi, Kenya. It's a real honor to be hosting this side event on the margins of the very first meeting of the COAG Subcommittee on Livestock. And I hope that you'll all find this hour together to be fruitful and engaging. Let me say too, congratulations to Ambassador Cherniak on his election as chair of this new subcommittee. All of us are aware, acutely so, of the immense challenge of climate change and the inextricable links with food systems. We know food production impacts the climate, and climate change impacts food production, and both must be addressed. The actions required to address such big challenges are as diverse as the food systems across the world, especially so for the livestock sector that presents significant opportunities to advance sustainable solutions, to mitigate climate change, and to support climate resilience and adaptation. Because of that diversity of systems and stakeholders across the livestock sector, grasping these opportunities really requires a multi-stakeholder process. So our session today provides a brief snapshot of 3 examples where the Global Agenda multi-stakeholder processes are helping to support climate actions in the livestock sector to foster transformation towards more sustainable food systems. We'll begin with a short presentation highlighting these examples, and then we'll hear from 4 panelists who will share their perspectives on climate challenges for the livestock sector and how these kinds of multi-stakeholder approaches can help address them. We'll hear from government officials in very different settings, Kenya and Mongolia, from farmers, and from the retail and consumer angle. Hopefully, we'll have time for you to share your questions and comments, and let me encourage you to put these in the Q&A or the chat as the session is underway. So we really do look forward to your inputs through these channels. We're going to start with giving you an opportunity to join in with a poll. And the poll question, Lavinia, maybe you could put it, is a multi-stakeholder approach, bringing together this full diversity of stakeholders, effective to design and implement climate action in the livestock sector? And you have a few choices there. We'll give you a few minutes. I can see just over 200 people online, so we'd like to get a good participation here. It's going great. Keep coming, we're nearly halfway. Wow, fantastic. Thank you very much. Great participation. And good too that we have some people for whom multi-stakeholder approaches are perhaps a bit new. Hopefully this session will help to inform you Looks like we may have nearly, oh no, a few more coming in. I think we can get the trend. You can see it on your screen, I believe. So Lavinia, maybe we could end the poll now and share the results. Maybe people couldn't see it, it was only me. And you can see we have a lot of people agreeing with that, some partially, a few no, and a few people unfamiliar with the approach. And hopefully, as I said, this session itself will be instructive in that regard. So without further ado, let me invite Walter Oyarzabal, an expert in climate change from Uruguay, who's going to share a presentation with us. Walter is a consultant of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture on UNFCCC matters. He's a member and reviewer of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change to the United Nations Convention on Climate Change. He's a reviewer for REDD and a member of the Global Agenda and the FAO LEAP initiatives. And he was formerly Director of Sustainability and Climate Change in the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, Livestock, Agriculture and Fisheries in Uruguay. Walter, the floor is yours. Please share. Walter?
Oh, I was muted.
Please Hello? Go ahead. We can hear you now.
Yes, you okay, I was muted, sorry. Well, I was saying it's a real honor to present you some elements on the multi-stakeholder approach to support more sustainable livestock-based food systems. As Shirley said at the beginning, it's clear for everybody that food production has an impact on climate, but also that climate change also impacts food production and nutrition. And these elements are paramount in the context of this changing climate. So we have to see how can we minimize our impact on climate change and maximize our adaptation and our resilience building processes in face of more frequent and more extreme events in the future that will affect, in particular, the agriculture sector. And we know that the sustainable livestock sector contributes to many development outcomes. It's critical for food system transformation, including improving family income, nutrition, women's empowerment, and other dimensions. Livestock systems and stakeholders are diverse all around the world, and in every country are also quite diverse. So a multi-stakeholder process is essential to addressing the climate change challenges. Multi-stakeholder process is somehow the only way to facilitate the necessary dialogue to catalyze the co-creation of solutions and to support the best practices and policy change to foster livestock sustainability worldwide. The GASL is committed to sustainable livestock development. It is a partnership of multiple livestock sector stakeholders. It's a unique global convening power, and it has technical strength. GASL is also a multi-stakeholder process that supports climate action by the livestock sector. And in order to provided some examples of how this multi-stakeholder approach is being implemented in some cases. GASL has selected three cases. One is the pathway to the net zero, organizing and committing to a dairy sector climate action. The second one is practice and policy change supported by multi-stakeholder processes. And the case is low carbon beef in Uruguay. And the third case we are going to share with you is the multi-stakeholder process to support and measure improved environmental performance of livestock system. And this is work that is undertaken by one action network of GASL, PAOLIV. Beginning with the pathway to dairy net zero, this initiative sees some relevant challenges and opportunities. For example, recognizes the importance of dairy systems globally for nutrition and livelihoods. Then it recognizes that there is a diversity of dairy systems globally, and that specificities of emissions vary considerable for different systems, and that positive change is possible for all systems. Even systems can be very different. All of them share this feature. There is possible positive change for all of them. So there is this is the opportunity that this initiative wants to carry on. Also, that when we consider a pathway to dairy net zero, we have to consider that there are different sources and different sinks of emissions. That then we need to consider not only the emissions, but also the potential for sequestration or removals of CO2 from the atmosphere. So we are talking about fluxes when we talk about emissions. So we have emissions to the atmosphere and fluxes from the atmosphere to different sinks, for example, soils, biomass, etc. In many regions, emissions can be significantly reduced by improving productivity and resource use efficiency. And this is very important to highlight because we may have many win-win opportunities without a trade-off between climate action and increasing productivity and resource efficiency. On the contrary, we can achieve win-win-win games in addressing the impacts of climate change and contributing to the mitigation of climate change. So the meaning is the need to clearly define the targets of the initiative, reducing emissions, safeguarding nutrition, sustaining livelihoods, and securing the future. On the right side of the screen, you can see a publication by the Net Zero, where you can get more in-depth information on this. In addition, the work of this initiative is related to the Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular to 4 of them: food and nutrition security, livelihoods and economic growth, animal health, climate and natural resources use. And the idea is to develop low pathways for all main dairy systems. And also, which is very important, to develop methods and tools to facilitate transforming the commitments into action. The proposal is to use life cycle assessments. So considering all the different sources of emissions and possible sinks along the value chain to the retailer. And there are some related initiatives that is important to highlight. For example, the global methane pledge that was launched during the COP26 in Glasgow, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, the procedures for reporting in the NDCs under the UNFCCC, the Cornelius joint work on agriculture, which is a dedicated agenda item specific for agriculture in the Climate Change Convention, and also the Global Alliance for Climate Smart Agriculture, GASL. So there are more than 80 organizations. There are diverse stakeholders, including private sector, academia, NGOs, governments, and representing at least 30% of global milk production that have already declared their support for pathways to dairy net zeros. And a full list can be accessed in the website. And also it's important to note that next Friday, there will be a specific event that will go in more detail and more in depth in this initiative. So as you see in the center of the screen, GHG emissions and removals, but also avoidance and adaptation, consider inset and offset, measurements and monitor are extremely important, and the overall support. In April 2021, there was a cluster consultation of GASL and to promote stakeholder engagement and commitments. And some outputs of these consultations lead to consider typologies of dairy systems, identify climate champions and early adopters, consider that different stakeholders can commit to support initiative in different ways, for example, producers, processors, research, academia, governments, financing institutions, international organizations as FAO, and to generate a common assessment framework to measure baselines and to measure progress, considering farm level, country level, and global level. The second case we want to briefly share with you is an initiative that aims at developing low carbon beef in Uruguay on natural grasslands, on our rangelands. Uruguay is a livestock country. More than 80% of the territory is dedicated to grazing cattle, and the sector is also very important for the economy, as 70% of all our exports are from this sector. So we in Uruguay face the challenge to mitigate climate change, restore degraded lands, but also assess the economical, social, and environmental impacts and barriers to scale up mitigation intervention, and at the same time ensure gains in environmental efficiency, intensification of production, and resilience. The technical approach that was established for this, the mitigation strategy of this project considers, in first place, working in a co-innovation work. It means not having a linear change, but work together with the farmers to co-innovate and to create an enabling environment for them to introduce changes and redesign the strategy of the farm. And the project is promoting mainly knowledge-intensive technologies to better manage the grasslands, to give more value to our grasslands, suppress overgrazing, enhance efficiency, improve the diet quality and quantity, increase carbon and nitrogen inputs that are essential to rebuild lost organic matter and soil carbon due to overgrazing processes, and also introduce trees for shadow and shelter and silvopastoral systems, which provide also a lot of benefits in terms of adaptation and mitigation. The project intervention has 62 pilot farms that are subject to co-innovation and very close monitoring, but also promotes the spillover of the proposals of changing the paradigm of grassland and animal management in 400,000 hectares of indirect project I would like to highlight that this project from the very beginning had a national multi-stakeholder approach, because from the design of the project to the implementation and assessment, the project is conducted and has this multi-stakeholder approach in which the farmers' organizations are involved, the National Rangelands Board is involved, the Ministry of Agriculture, and also the academy with the faculty of agronomy and the National Agricultural Research Institute. So, but this national platform also is connected to FAO and Jeff that provided technical assistance and support for the project and financing. And GASL had an inspiring role in implementing the multi-stakeholders approach, because in our contact with GASL, we understood that we had to change the way in which we identify and try to implement projects from the policies level, like involving the stakeholders from the very beginning. And we can show very briefly some elements. The project is already on the ground and it's implemented. The baseline was developed, and after 1 year of modifying the way in which farmers manage the grasslands and the animals, the changes are quite interesting. In the last line here in this table, we could reduce 6% the emissions of methane, 5% the N2O, and 16% the emissions in terms of CO2 equivalent per kilogram for beef. So this is a strategy that increased the productivity without increasing or even reducing emissions. So we have a lower footprint, and at the same time increasing the farmers' income. So this is a big incentive for farmers to continue doing this without the need of external subsidies to artificially sustain the process. And now, finally, the last case is the case of one of the action networks of GASL. GASL, as you may know, is a platform that involves public sector, industry, private NGOs, academia, donors, and around this arrangement of stakeholders, different action networks are working. For example, related to giving more value to grasslands, or taking care of animal welfare, or considering silvopastoral systems, etc. But one of these action networks, which we are highlighting today, is LEAP. LEAP is a Livestock Environmental Assessment and Performance Partnership. It includes also a multi-stakeholder approach, because it has representatives from the private sector there, from 21 countries plus EU, and also from NGOs and civil society. For what? To improve the environmental performance of livestock system while ensuring economic and social viability. Because the metric of process, the measurement, the development of indicators of progress are key for any successful strategy on the ground. And then LEAP delivers technical guidance, documents, implements seminars, develops applications, and supports practice change. Now in 2022 and to 2024, LEAP has initiated the 4th phase of its work. And in this diagram, you can see the main elements that sustain this strategy. The focus are on 4 elements: the harmonization of technical guidelines and methodologies, the knowledge sharing, the database with information and data supported by GLIM and soil carbon storage, and also the awareness raising and capacity development through, for example, e-learning, regional workshops. Currently, an important work is being undertaken in the Methane Technical Advisory Group, working on delivering elements on how to measure methane emissions, making an in-depth review of methane mitigation opportunities in enteric fermentation, housing manure management on land application, and paddy rice. And some illustrative examples on how to enhance mitigation strategies through novel metrics for methane assessment are also considered. This work started in 2021, and around 60 experts from all regions are involved. And the next steps will be a public consultation in May 2022, release in July this year, delivering e-learning courses, regional workshops, national and sectoral climate action also through the global methane pledge that, as you know, was launched in COP26 in Glasgow, where more than 100 countries committed to an overall and altogether reduction of methane of 30% in 2030 compared to 2020, but methane from all sources, and including one of the most important, which is the fossil fuel methane, or the emissions of methane that are related to exploitation and delivering the different fossil fuels. So, well, if you want more information on this, you can go to FAO LIP, and there is full detail on how this work is being done and when and how the elements that are being developed by these methane technical advisory groups are going to be delivered. So to finalize this short intervention, here are the three cases that we have shared with you. The links to them are here in the presentation, so you can go for more information and more detail on the net zero pathways for low carbon dairy, on the low carbon beef in Uruguay, and on the FAO LEAP action network. So I thank you very much. The intervention was very brief, but I hope it can provide elements for further comments and intervention from our panelists and from all the participants of this meeting. Thank you very much, Shirley. I am back to you.
Thank you really so much, Walter. There's plenty of food for thought there. And I've seen as well that we've had some more examples coming through in the chat. So there's really interesting things to look at there as well. As we said, these were just a few examples. Let's move now to our panel. And I'd like to invite Tim McAllister, who's a research scientist, ruminant nutrition and microbiology, agriculture and agri-foods Canada. Tim has also just concluded his term as the chair of FAO LEAP, the example we just heard about, and he's going to moderate our panel discussion. But let me remind you to please continue putting your questions and comments, and we'll hopefully get back to them. Tim, over to you.
Thanks very much, Shirley. It's indeed a pleasure to have the opportunity to moderate the panel here today. And congratulations, Walter, on an excellent outline of some very important initiatives that are underway with the stakeholder initiative. We're lucky enough today we have 4 distinguished guests that are going to join us in the panel discussion, and I'd like to introduce them now. So if we could get individuals to turn your cameras on, please. So from Mongolia, we have Dr. Batmunk Damdorje. He's the Director General of the Livestock Policy Implementation and Coordination Department in the Ministry of Food and Agriculture and Light Industry. He's got a strong knowledge on agriculture irrigations and drinking wells for livestock, and experienced in the climate change and livestock sector. From Kenya, we have Mr. Bernard Kamiro. He's the head of Climate Change and Livestock Sustainability Section State, the Department of Livestock, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries, and Cooperatives. And he has a background in livestock ruminant nutrition, and he's a climate change expert. Then from the World Farmers Organization, we have Ms. Katrina Sarah Malin. She's a livestock farmer on the west coast of New Zealand near Lake Brunner. She's the former president of the Federated Farmers of New Zealand, and she's represents the Oceania constituency on the board of directors of the World Farmers Organization. And then finally, we have representing retailers and consumers, Mr. Chin Tran Man. He's the CEO at Bac Tom, Vietnam. Bac Tom has 20 healthy food stores in Hanoi and Da Nang. So we have a few questions, or a couple of questions that we'd like to pose to the panelists. One of those is, what are the greatest challenges for climate action from your perspective? And how does the multi-stakeholder partnership help advance or address these challenges? So let's go in the same order as I made the introduction. So Dr. Durnjor, if we could have you from Magali, if you could please maybe address those questions, that would be great. I think you great. Yeah,
okay.
Should be good. Thanks.
Okay, the chair, ladies and gentlemen, I strongly believe we have common understanding of global climate change and how this change affects our daily lives. Currently, rise of the global air temperature and environmental change are now visible, also feasible to global population. In case of Mongolia, air temperature have risen by 2.24 degrees of Celsius over the past 80 years. This phenomenon increases evaporation water at pasture areas and has a negative impact on livestock production in Mongolia, which is country of nomadic pastoralism. The country is mainly engaged in nomadic pastoral animal husbandry as a traditional way of life, which preserves nomadic heritage. The identical clear evidences of climate and its change effects have been observed in country economy and livelihood by livestock numbers reduction due to drought and drought. As of the end of 2021, the total number of livestock in Mongolia counted 67.3 million. In terms of livestock species, there are 4.3 million horses, 5 million cattle, 453.8 thousand camels, 31.1 million sheep, and 26.5 million goats. In terms of livestock production, meat and dairy production, amount of preparation of wool, cashmere, and leather have increased by 5 to 10 percentages in the last 5 years. The jute since 1999 has killed the largest number of livestock, affecting the rural population, especially herders and national economy, banks, and inflation. For example, in 1996-2010, 21 million head of livestock died in the drought, which of 9.7 head of livestock in 2009, 2010 was the largest loss. Climate change, the impact on livestock husbandry is having a huge impact on our food supply. The livestock industry in our country can be called as a food production. The livestock sector is a major export sector, supplying food and livestock industry with livestock raw materials. Therefore, the sustainability of the livestock sector is important to provide food and fodder to the population. The government of Mongolia is cooperating with international organizations to support livestock development, improve the legal environment for pasture use and protection, and ensure the sustainable development of the livestock sector. The Mongolian Agenda for Sustainable Livestock Action Plan was approved by the ministerial order and implemented fruitfully between 2018-2021. As a result and continuation of the Mongolian Agenda for Sustainable Livestock Action Plan within framework of United Nations development programs, we are coordinating development of young herders training system to support good livestock husbandry practices and improving Mongolians' climate change, adaptability, and risk management. Projects in close cooperation with FAO, regional and national officers. Alternatively, number of projects funded by World Bank and Asian Development Bank for enhancement of pastoral livestock sectors adaptation and mitigation to the climate change and resilience are under implementations. Pastoral livestock husbandry system in arid and especially semi-arid zones of the globe is directly dependent from the climate change and also to be dependent in the future years for long term of period. Therefore, there is a certain needs to implement policy and organizational measures for the development of livestock adapted to climate change in cooperation with international organizations. In particular, herders need to provided with appropriate knowledge, adequate information, and applicable response skills on the impact of climate change on natural pastures and water resources. In addition, there are needs to motivate multi-stakeholders partners active and initiative cooperational enhancement of processing capacity of food and light industries to process livestock, raw materials, and products. If we increase it, the capacity of processing factories, we will able to export our livestock, originated processed raw materials, and enhance national export income, at the same time providing more healthy, nutritious food to the world population. I personally and as a government representative strongly believe that the multi-stakeholders action like this is vital to achieve sustainable development goals, number 1, and 2, the livestock sector can contribute solvable food with food production in adequate and reliable supply. As you know, United Nations declared 2026 the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists on March 15, 2022. I kindly wish you all fruitful discussion and to call for effective and capable multi-stakeholder partnership. Thank you for your attention. Please.
Thanks very much for your comments, Dr. Dundar. It's obvious that the multi-stakeholder partnership is very important in dealing with the diversity of agriculture in Mongolia. Bernard from Kenya, could we please have your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tim. I hope I can be heard.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Shali Tarawali, for organizing this event and being the chair of GASL. Thank you also, Walter, for the exposition on the issues related to livestock and climate change. For Kenya, maybe just to give a context of where we are. In terms of our livestock sector, we are looking at a sector that contributes to about 14% of our GDP. 50% of our labor come from that sector. Most of the producers are smallholders. So we're looking at a great diversity in terms of production. Livestock production systems are also very diverse. So we have the small producers, who are the majority, but few large-scale farms. So our production systems are extremely diverse. In terms of livestock in the country as a nation, 80% of our land is arid and semi-arid. So most of it is not suitable for conventional crop production or staple food production. Most of these areas are very ecologically fragile. And we are seeing over time, because of the issues of climate change coming in, creating even greater impacts and loss of biodiversity because of the nature of their fragility. So looking at livestock again sector, we are looking at a sector that contributes, a subsector that contributes 90% of agricultural greenhouse gases. But this is happening with the mind that there is increasing demand for food. Obviously, because of urbanization, improved socio-economic factors, we are seeing there is an increasing demand for animal source foods. But this is against the backdrop of what I've said, the extreme events that we are seeing, especially droughts occasioned by the impacts of climate change. So for us, there are a number of challenges we are facing as a nation in the sector. Because of the diversity and all that that we have here, we are obviously facing issues related to limited knowledge about local climate change impacts, because we have not been able to quantify, especially the potential of adaptation and mitigation actions. So that is really a big challenge to us. The issues about data and tools to assess and monitor impacts of adaptation measures and the technical and economic mitigation potential in the sector, we still have that. And obviously, we are looking at policy, developing policy for the subsector. We really need to have data. We need the tools and the knowledge for that. We still have suboptimal engagement of livestock subsector policy makers and experts. We are trying, but we still haven't reached the optimal levels for us to be able to fit into contributing to national climate actions, and also to ensure that we are within the international obligations. We still have inadequate capacity or insufficient capacity to have some sort of cost benefits of these climate actions. So as the temperatures are increasing, again, our local communities are not able to have some sort of understanding of how these issues of climate change are really impacting them. So it becomes a bit difficult to be able to see how they can be able to adapt or even reduce the greenhouse gases coming from their operations.
Thanks for that, Bernard. I think that's some really good points. We kind of need to move on to keep on time here. But yeah, I think the challenges of climate change are making sustainability even a greater issue, and the need for the multi-stakeholder partnership. Katrina, could you make a few comments, please?
Yes, I think one of the biggest challenges that is facing farmers of livestock is the social challenge. I've heard my colleagues talk about the actual impacts of climate change, but I think also there's a policy response and a social response that has come through the awareness, the growing awareness of climate change, and the fact that livestock does have emissions of methane. And so we are finding in New Zealand and Oceania that people are expecting big cuts in agricultural output of methane via reducing numbers of livestock. And we need the tools to be able to do it another way, because we have very productive livestock in our part of the world. And so it would actually add to emissions leakage if we're not careful. So the social response from people who are hearing all the bad things about methane is a very tough one. It's also leading to skills shortages or supply of staff to do jobs on farms is becoming low, because people are thinking, I would prefer not to be in that sector. So that is one of the things that is very tough as an aside to the actual effects of having to mitigate and adapt and try and implement new tools as they're developed. And yeah, it comes from policy settings and publicity that is perhaps unfair, because farmers are doing so much in this area, and that transfer of technology that has been mentioned from Walter as we learn is critical to be able to apply that across the world, so that all livestock can start to reduce its methane through many methods wherever possible. So I would just like to make sure that people are aware of the social impacts of some of the discussions around methane and livestock.
Thanks for that, Katrina. Yeah, there's definitely some emerging technologies, I think, that are going to have an impact on methane emissions from ruminants, and spreading that information and getting that out to the stakeholders, I think, is an important role that the multi-stakeholder partnership could play. Xian, could we please have your comments from the retail sector perspective?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm Chien from Vietnam. I'm from Bạc Tóm, retailer of healthy food. Yes, for the last more than 10 years, I found that the climate change have effect a lot on all areas of our life, particularly on farming. And in livestock, we found out that the same with our other foods, that clients are the most important to drive us on how to work with climate action, you know, so that in order for us to solve this, we have to work with the suppliers and to do a lot of marketing campaigns, so that the clients support us in shifting the livestock models to more climate action. And recently we are quite successful in, particularly, for example, in pigs raising, that we use more than 40% of inputs for feeds for pigs as banana food. So 40%, you know. So that's very good that pigs are being raised in a large farms of vegetables and bananas. And of course, second, very important, is also the support by the government. So we not only working with consumers association, but also the Ministry of Agriculture, so that they also have policy in supporting this kind of livestock models that use that livestock that lives in big farms with a lot of bananas and vegetables. Is also very important to reduce emission and to raise the awareness of climate change in the consumers. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Xian. Yeah, I think there's considerable potential for byproduct feeds, food waste to be recurtailed and used as feeds for livestock. I think that's a very, very good point you make as well. Shirley, I think we have some time for questions. If you want to pick a few out of that we've got, I think there's a number that have come in.
Thanks very much, Tim, and to the panelists too, who've really shown us the diversity of challenges, but we've also heard the diversity of perspectives. We've heard from retail, from government, from farmers, and I think that's also been extremely valuable for this conversation. And it actually reflects to one of the questions, and it might be the only one, that I picked from a number of the messages in the chat, which talks about, on the one hand, how could these sorts of approaches that Water had expounded be replicated in very different situations, in Africa, perhaps, for example? And how could we better share good practices, but then have an opportunity for local adaptation? We know we can't give blanket solutions, silver bullets, and so on. So I'll open that for not only our panelists, but also for Water, if he would like to comment on that. Any one of you, if you have a comment on that. How can we use this multi-stakeholder approach to really help with this diversity, scaling out of best practices, but also being able to adapt and adopt on the ground? How can we tackle that challenge? Anybody want to have a go at that? Very quickly, because time is going fast. Sarah, Katrina?
Yeah, I believe that the most effective tools that farmers pick up from each other in their own country, through farming networks, we need to share them to other countries. It may not be all applicable, as you've said, but actually the principles may be, and they may be able to adapt something. But farmer to farmer, we have a language we speak to each other in, we know each other, you know, the way we work. It's one of the best ways, but there are also some very good networks of facilitators out there. I know Climate Smart Agriculture is an incredible place where lots of facilitators come together and they then go back to their farmers and put stuff out. So there are forums that we should utilise.
Excellent, thank you. I don't know if you're able to put any links of something in the chat, maybe if people are interested on that, Katrina.
But
Did
Bernard
anyone
has
else want to
Bernard
comment
has his
on that?
hand raised there. Surely Bernard, I think, had his
Who
hand
does?
up.
Oh,
Bernard?
Bernard, sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't see
Okay.
it.
Thank you very much. What we normally see as the contribution of especially the different networks is that they become enablers for us. These are points where we look at the issues around capacity, building our capacity, especially in our context. The knowledge exchange, the learning that you're getting is building our capacity in terms of technologies, in terms of the processes that we need to go through, and also the peer learning that is very critical to us. So we are getting technologies, we are getting our capacity build, but more importantly, we also getting that connection with the financing aspect. I mean, we meet different stakeholders in these kind of forums. We are able to link with them. We tell them contexts, and at some point they also link us to aspects where we can also get financing. We have done this. Currently, we are working with FAO, for example, through some of these networks. We are building our capacity in terms of the MRV system in the livestock subsector. And this is what we value as the importance of some of these networks. Just on Tuesday this week, we were launching a climate smart agriculture multi-stakeholder platform. And here, Katrina is talking about the networks that involve the end users of this. So creating that movement and taking some of these technologies, knowledge, and linkages through those kind of platforms where all stakeholders are really then creates awareness about the issues around the technologies and processes that we can be able to use to create adaptation and sustainability in livestock. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Bernard. And I'm really sorry that we're going to have to wind up. I'd like to do one last thing, one last poll here. Lavinia, could we have the the last poll. You've heard quite a bit about multi-stakeholder approaches. So do you think it could support more ambitious climate action for a sustainable livestock sector? Comments, responses here. I'm seeing a lot of responses coming in. We're very fast. That's really good. And quite varied answers we're getting this time. We're well over half of us. That's really good. Okay, Lavinia, in the interest of time, if we could end and just share the results. Yeah, I think everybody can see it now. And you can see people see opportunities at many different levels in the country, in the region, globally. Maybe there's particular circumstances. So that's really, really excellent. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us in that way. And sorry, we can't have a longer discussion, but I think we need to wrap up now. So let me conclude with just a few thoughts that I picked up. I think we've heard that there's lots of opportunities and there's lots of ways of bringing together those opportunities, of communicating, of working in multi-stakeholder settings. We've also heard, I think, that it's not just about climate. It's never on its own, climate action. We need to think about social, economic, environmental dimensions, their relationships and their trade-offs. Again, an important aspect potentially of a multi-stakeholder approach. We've also heard there's lots of solutions out there. People are doing many, many things, from the farmers to the retail and everybody in between. There's lots going on, and perhaps we need to do more to share some of that. So really, thank you. Those were my top line thoughts, along with this idea that the diversity itself is something to harness across the livestock sector. There's no one size fits all problem. There's no one size fits all solution. Thank you all for joining. I've seen many of you question if we're going to get the presentation, if we're going to get the recording, and even the chat, because there's lots of useful links there. Yes, we will make sure we've got everybody's coordinates because you all registered. So we will make sure that you get all this information. Give us a week or so to put it all together and put it out to you. And look for that, stay engaged, reach out. And thank you very, very much, everybody, for joining. Thank you to the presenters, the moderators, the panelists. Thank you from me to the agenda support team who've made this happen, and to also the FAO interpretation and technical support. Perfectly smooth. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day, or start of your day, I think, for some of you.